Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the No Show. I'm Lisa Martin. Welcome back from your July 4th holiday, those of you in the States. Today, we're going to be talking about real-time machine learning in SingleStore with MindsDB. I've got two guests here. Jorge Torres joins us, the CEO of MindsDB. Jorge, welcome to the program.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you for having us here.
Good to have you here. And Oliver Schabenberger is back. I think this is his third time, Chief Innovation Officer at SingleStore. Oliver, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Lisa. I love doing those. Thanks for having me.
You're a pro. You're a pro. All right, we're going to talk about three things today. First of all, before we get into our three topics, Jorge is going to give you guys an overview of MindsDB, who they are, what they do. We're also going to pop a link in the comment section here where you can do access a free beta of MindsDB. Then we're going to talk about the three topics. First is the state of machine learning and the life cycle. Where are things today? Then we're going to talk about doing machine learning in the database. Why? You're going to want to stick around to find out. The third thing that we're going to leave you with is empowering citizen data scientists, how you can do that with MindsDB and SingleStore. We'd love any comments or questions from you guys. Pop them in the LinkedIn. If there's questions here and we've got time, we will address them. All right, Jorge, let's go ahead and kick things off with you. Give the audience an overview of MindsDB.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. And MindsDB is here to democratize machine learning. Essentially, what we realize is that people can make better decisions if they use the data that they have on databases and if they apply machine learning to that. So MindsDB is probably the most sophisticated tool there for you to do machine learning in the database and to do it through SQL. And the aim for that is to empower everyone that uses SQL on kind of like a day-to-day basis to also leverage on predictive capabilities and machine learning.
Excellent. Thanks, Jorge. Let's start with you on topic one, Jorge, as well. The state of machine learning and the life cycle. Where are things right now?
Yeah, so the way that people do machine learning today is very similar to how people do machine learning in research, but applied machine learning should be different. At the end, most people want to ask a question that is predictive of manner, and they should be able to answer this question without requiring a PhD. And the way that they treat it today is more like an application. We believe that the main ingredient for machine learning is data. And if your data exists on the database, you've accomplished the bigger part. You know how to organize your data already has some sort of schema. And at the end, after every query, the columns is what people understand as feature engineering. Now, the modeling and the deployment of machine learning is what MindsDB adds into the picture by being able to seamlessly do this through SQL and essentially complete the cycle of machine learning in a very single environment, which is where your data is at. So if you keep those building blocks as close to where your data is being managed and manipulated, then you can enable these capabilities to all the individuals that touch the database, either to put the data there or to extract data for decision making.
Got it. I heard single in there. Oliver, SingleStore sounds like a good match. Talk to us about SingleStore's perspective of machine learning and the life cycle and where some of the, Oliver, the historical friction points have been between machine learning and data analytics.
Yes, as Jorge mentioned, machine learning today doesn't happen necessarily close to where the data originates. We are managing different stacks for transactional systems, analytical systems, and now machine learning systems with a lot of data movement and different tool chains, different tool sets. And machine learning is really about being able to predict and to classify from data, to learn patterns from data. So you want to do this as close to the data where possible. The three basic steps are to train a machine learning model on data, then use that trained model to predict or to classify new observations, and then to also let the model explain itself to you to find out how the model works, so you can have responsible artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we see a lot of friction when these three steps are separated from each other. When the training of the model happens in a different environment, for example, in a data lake with a different tool set, and then the deployment, the operationalization of the model happens in a different infrastructure. There's a handoff, there's different teams involved, and that's not necessary. We all agree that the closer you are to the data, the better off you can be. And so the democratization of analytics is really, really important here, of advanced analytics, simplifying these steps of training, predicting, and explaining, but also drawing on the tool set that people are familiar with. If you're familiar with SQL and you want to get into machine learning, maybe that's just a big step to learn the tool set of data science and to learn all the ins and outs of gradient boosting and support vector machines. But there's automation that can help with that, and we have the ability to hook into the existing sort of tool chain that you're familiar with, and that really broadens the scope of those who can apply machine learning, and that's really powerful democratization. We hear a lot about ML and AI, and really everybody wants to participate. But so increasing that participation by tearing down barriers and removing barriers and lowering the barrier of entry without taking anything away from the power of the methods, it's just a wonderful initiative to be part of. And of course, SingleStore, a very powerful, fast database. We have incredible capabilities around analytics, a fast ingest around streaming. All these things are important if you want to really bring machine learning to life. So if you can predict a model, that's one thing. But if you can predict on a stream of data, that is incredibly powerful to enable real-time analytics. So we want to broaden the data analytics ecosystem. That means bringing machine learning to the database. So it's a perfect match between SingleStore and MindsDB.
Excellent. Let's punt this back over to Jorge, moving on to topic 2, machine learning in the database. Jorge, talk to us about the MindsDB SingleStore partnership was just announced recently in the last couple of weeks. But talk to me a little bit about why MindsDB chose SingleStore. I know you have choice, but what is it about SingleStore that really made this a natural fit?
Yeah, and I think that diving deeper into what Oliver was explaining, there are so many ways that SingleStore sees data that really make this relationship very interesting. On the one hand, you see data from the database perspective, but you also see it as a stream. And I think that for many machine learning use cases, you want to train from the database as a database, but then you want to consume predictions in real time. And those elements made it very interesting for us. There are so many other techniques of data transformation that SingleStore offers to people that at the end make it very efficient for the machine learning process. Going back to the initial statement, it makes sense that the data preparation happens in the database and nowhere else. And SingleStore offers a great variety of functionalities for that to be effective. There is also a great capacity on window functions, which for many of the kind of time series problems that people have on databases, make the data preparation side in terms of what we do with MindsDB quite effective. And we really like that synergy that we have so far because we see the full life cycle of machine learning to be complete with this partnership. Again, and to reinforce this, we believe that SingleStore is probably the most powerful database for data transformations. And if you see it from the scope of machine learning being that the main ingredient, it just makes sense that we make this. And that's why we're here.
Got it. Oliver, give me your perspective on why, so doing machine learning in the database, you both made the point of why it makes sense, understanding why these two companies are partnering together and the opportunities that is going to allow companies in the industry to be able to unlock. But why would DBAs care about doing machine learning in the database? Oliver, what are your thoughts there?
We all want to be more data-driven and want to get more intelligence from our data. We want to reduce the friction and the time between data and decision. And so a good way of doing this is by bringing a powerful decisioning tool set closer to the data, rather than taking the data out, putting it somewhere else and hoping that some other team and some other methodology can do this. We can bring the methodology to the data. SingleStore is the one database for data-intensive applications, and data intensity is a good thing. You want to be fast, you want to be real time, but in order to enable data-intensive applications, we need to reduce the complexity. The complexity comes from having to stitch together many different tools. The assumption that an application is not an application unless it involves 3 or 4 different databases. We're done with that. So the modern application has more power in the front end and more power in the back end. So to decide where the technology needs to go, that is important. That's an important aspect, and we're helping with that by putting the machine learning engine with the database. So you can take advantage of the machine learning close to the data. You can think about it as a model, like an AI table. It's a very clever concept in MindsDB. And so it's familiar territory for those they're used to work with relational databases, yet the power of machine learning is at their fingertips. And the automation that is built into MindsDB allows you to bring these things to bear in a safe way without having to know all the ins and outs of how to tune an algorithm, how to choose the hypertuning parameters, how to select between a support vector machine and a gradient boost and a decision tree. Those decisions can be made for you, while at the same time you can inquire about the result. You can see what MindsDB created for you, so there are checks and balances in place. So from a DBA's perspective, it's thank you for allowing me to bring this technology to the SingleStore database. Now the data intensity of my applications can rise even more.
Right, and one of the things we've talked about a lot in the last 15, 16 months, I've lost count, Oliver, on this show, is the fact that the access to real-time data for so many companies and many industries is no longer a nice to have. That speed is absolutely critical in it. And we've talked about data-intensive applications a number of times, Uber, Netflix, for example. Jorge, I want to get your opinion. Oliver talked about the obvious value in training the model at the data layer, the natural fit there, why DBAs would care. Let's switch this. And for folks, data scientists, for folks that are doing machine learning, why should they care that training the model at the data layer is now something that can be done with these two technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. So we created this abstraction, which is called an AI table. And essentially, this abstraction allows you to see a machine learning model the same way that you see a table or a view. And by making this abstraction, you can now think of machine learning probably the right way. You're thinking of machine learning the way that most people would like to think about it, which is that it's just another representation of your underlying data. And by making it this common block within the infrastructure in the database, then DBAs and data analysts can focus on the important ingredient, which is on what queries do I need to use in order to train my model, and what questions do I need to answer that are predictive, rather than getting into the mechanics of how do I train, what is the boilerplate infrastructure that tends to be repetitive and yet time-consuming. So we delegate it to MindsDB and focus the attention on the important questions that they should be answering, which is what type of information do I want to forecast, and then what information should I bring in to make that forecast. And it opens up the door for a concept of citizen data scientist. I think that the approach that we have here is by making this simple abstraction of machine learning, then we are enabling this capability so that everyone that touches the database can be a data scientist. And that is ultimately the goal of MindsDB, democratizing it that way. And the best way to democratize it is really to empower those people that know data and that know the questions that should be kind of like answered in a given context. And that's why we're doing this.
Before we go into our final topic, which is about this citizen data scientist, I do want to let you guys know, we're going to pop this in the comment section, that Jorge and Oliver are doing a webinar 2 weeks from today, July 22nd. We'll put the link in to register for that. They're going to be talking much more about this, talking to those developers. So really interesting opportunity to unpack this topic even more deeply. All right, guys, let's go back to Jorge, back to you, back to the citizen data scientist. It makes sense, the democratization. You mentioned, Jorge, and Oliver, you did as well, about the familiarity of tools like SQL. How is that an advantage to empowering the regular folks who aren't data scientists to become one and be able to understand what queries to ask and be able to extract value from data faster?
Citizen data scientist is a non-data scientist. It's that simple. It's somebody who wants to use data science in their work to get the job done, but doesn't know all the ins and outs of the data science methodology. But what they do have, the big advantage is access to the enterprise data and knowing the enterprise data that needs to be used and how can be used in order to get to decisions. Now what we need to help is close that gap between data and decision by using the right tooling and automation that they're familiar with, so that they don't have to study data science to get the job done. We want them to be citizen data scientists. So you can say we can increase our data science potential by training more data scientists. Yes, that's one way. We can also, by automation and by providing the right tooling, so that you can use the tools you're already familiar with, but make data science contributions and make the data science decisions in a safe and smart way. That is much more effective and powerful because it applies much more broadly. So it's really a noble person who is a citizen data scientist, and that they're doing data scientists as part of their day-to-day job without the training, but relying on the tools and the knowledge of the data.
Oliver, question for you. This seems you both talked about the natural fit of training the model where the data live, the ostensible benefits of doing that. I'm just curious, as the Chief Innovation Officer, why do you think this hasn't been done before? Why is SingleStore leading edge here?
It has been tried before. We try to get analytics closer to the data many times. There are many approaches to doing this. One is lift the data out and put it somewhere else and use a specific analytic tool set, or build specific analytic platforms that operate on the data. But it needs to good understanding of the relational character of the database, the data structure, the storage, how the algorithms interact with it, the right interfaces, how to do a multi-pass algorithm over data. That is difficult, and so it takes knowledge, it takes engineering to do this. And I think here we have a really beautiful complementary set of capabilities where 1 + 1 is 3 or more. Where we can bring the general purpose and the power of the SingleStore database together with the algorithmic handling and the interfaces of MindsDB to really empower everyone who works with databases to also work with machine learning. And I think if you've wondered how am I going to make contributions in machine learning, I don't know the tooling. I'm not familiar with TensorFlow, and I don't sling code in Python and Jupyter Notebook. Is this accessible to me? Yes, it is. And this collaboration, this partnership makes it happen.
Oliver, last question for you. Where can existing SingleStore customers go besides the webinar on July 22nd that I mentioned? How can they get started? This is available now, yes?
This is available now. This is an integration between MindsDB and SingleStore. They can get started right now and come to our website. We'll have webinars. We have material out there for you. Contact me, contact Jorge and the team, and we'll get you going.
Awesome. And last thing I want to mention is, Jorge, get some commentary from you on, there is access to a free beta version of MindsDB. We're also, I think we've already popped the link in, cloud.mindsdb.com. But Jorge, give us a little perspective of if folks go there to check that out. There it is right there. What can they access with this?
Yeah, so here you have a beta of what we're doing with SingleStore. So you can create an account and then connect your SingleStore database. And the interesting thing is that MindsDB also speaks the MySQL wire protocol. So the same thing that you experience with SingleStore, you can connect to MindsDB the same way for any prediction questions. And therefore, you're managing the same environment, the same type of clients. And the idea that we want to portray here on our beta cloud is that you can start using these capabilities from the get-go while we continue to deepen the integration that we have with SingleStore. Right now, we have a way for you to work with SingleStore data and then consume predictions the same way that you consume queries in normal SingleStore environment. But the next iteration for us is to leverage on those amazing capabilities that SingleStore has for data preparation. That is parallel queries, the ability to maximize the use of Windows functions. So you don't have to do a lot of that heavy data preparation on your own, but we can essentially accelerate that part for you within MindsDB. Then reiterating on the main point, in the beta, you can work with data you already have in SingleStore, create models, start doing predictions, and stay tuned for like the premium features that we have for you as we continue to go in this integration.
Excellent. Thanks, Jorge and Oliver, for sharing the value of doing machine learning in the database, how organizations can get started, and how it can empower the average person within an organization in any industry to become that citizen data scientist. We'll be looking forward to hearing more from you guys 2 weeks from today, July 22nd, 10 a.m. Pacific, for the webinar that I mentioned. Again, the link is in here to register. And don't worry, it does conflict with the no-show. We won't cry. if you're over there watching the webinar, but know that both are going to be available on demand. Oliver and Jorge, thank you for joining me this morning. Really interesting stuff. Can't wait to hear and see some real world results from this fantastic collaboration.
Thank you for having us, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure. For my guests, I'm Lisa Martin. I'll see you in 2 weeks with a couple of new guests, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.